most welcome. So basically, in this individual reading, there's going to be for Aries as a fire sign, as a zodiac sign, and it's going to be for September 29th to October 4th of 2025. So, this is going to be a very interesting reading for you. This is going to be for a tarot card reading, that's how it goes. But the way this is for you, Aries, you need to understand about what's going on in this situation, no matter how you're feeling, no matter what you're going to be doing in your own normal life, because it all depends on your point of view. That's how it goes. And you have to understand, but the way this is, you have to believe in order to do that. That's the way it goes, right? This is the way it seems to be. So, there's a good saying, and seeing is believing, believing is seeing. That's all you can do. But you have to take a risk. You have to take about your own emotions, your own priorities, you know what it takes, but that's how it goes, right? This is the way it's going to be. And it's the way it goes, right? So you're trying to be how wild you are, Aries. You have to know what's right, what's wrong, be vigilant of how you're feeling. That's how it goes. And this is what it's going to be. So this oracle card, it says, denial. I acknowledge my fear, but I replace it with the insight of awareness. That's the way it kind of happens nowadays, where you need to understand that if you're going to be in denial, if you're changing your own words or changing your own names or whatever you're doing, and pretend to be somebody else, no matter what it is, this is the way it works. This is the way about how denial works, right? You have to understand that, and you can't play games with somebody, whether if you're in a relationship or doesn't, right? So you have to understand about if you're in denial areas, you pay attention to what you're going to be doing in that way. You have to understand that, right? This is the way of how it goes. This is not the blame game. It wasn't. But, this is how it goes, right? You have to understand about what it is in that way, and this is how it goes, right? This is the way it is. So, I'm going to figure out you versus them in this wonderful category, because this is the way it kind of is at the moment. And this is the way it kind of is. So you understand what it is, and you have to know what it's going to be. So I'm going to say who's on the left side, and then who's in the right side. We don't know who's in the middle. So this is the way it works. So here we go. So in this situation for you, Aries, is that the hammer of yours, there's no restrictions right now, because you don't have any restrictions, okay, whatsoever. Now on the right side, about them, they have the progress, right? They want to make progress, right? That's the way it goes. So this is the way it works in the way how it is, and this is the way it's going to be. You need to understand about how you're feeling in that way, because you're trying to be who you are. You're trying to be authentic. You're trying to be reliable on how it goes. You have to understand that. So the way of this is, you're going to do that as it goes. This is the way it seems to be. So I'm going to look at about you. So you have the 3 Pentacles reversed. You have the Page of Cups over 8 because you want loyalty. King Pentacles reversed. There's no wealth, stability. But the Empress over right, there's nourishment. Yeah, because you're being nourished, right? You want to have loyalty because that's what you want. Because that's how it goes. So you might be doing that under Pisces, Cancer, Scorpio, no matter what. But that's how it goes. You're trying to understand about what it takes in that way, because you're trying to be at the center of attention. You're trying to know what's going to be happening in that way, right? So you're trying to not to be in denial or whatever it is. The way all this is the way it works, right? This is the way it goes. What's for them? Let's see. The second sword, there's a delusion. Queen of Pentacles sword, there's basically like instability, and the Knight of Swords sword, there's drama. Yeah, in that way, right? That's how it goes. So you're trying to be who you are because you're trying to understand that. This is the way it goes. You're not trying to play games here, but the way of this is, you need to be what it works. So for them, when they have a delusion, if they're going to be in their own way, it's like they're having their own deja vu moments, right? That's how it goes. And this is the way it seems to be. You're trying to know about it in that way because you're trying to have your own source of knowing what to do. You're trying to have your own therapy, whatever it is, but that's how it goes, right? It's like this is the way it works. And nowadays, Aries, you need to pay attention to what you're doing in that way. What's in the middle of this situation for you, Aries? The Queen of Cups is over. There's empathy, because there's two stories of in this situation. You have to look at the two of the way how this works, right? So if you want Pisces, Cancer, Scorpio, You pay attention to it. You pay attention about water signs in this gradual phase in the way how it goes, right? That's the way it happens. So let's see what's going on in the left side for you. The Hierophant reverse, there's no guidance, right? So you're not being guided. What's on the right side for them? The Judgment reverse, you're not taking action. Alright, so what's in the middle? Magician reverse, there's no skill. Obviously, you know, that's a big point. But that's how it kind of remains. So let's see what's going on. So let's see you versus them in this situation for you, Aries. So now in Sorcerer, there is trauma, and the Eight of Sorcerer, there's anxiety. You know, Aries, it's like when you do it, it's like you're basically saying that, you know, you're basically crying, you're whimpering, you don't know what to do, but you're facing your own reality. You need to understand that when you face it, you know, head on, it's like almost like a near collision. You know, that's how it goes. You have to focus about your emotions, no matter how it is for you, Aries, because that's how it is. You have to get what you want because you're trying to understand that. That's the way it works, right? What's another situation for the Magician? Nine of Sorcerers, there's no drama. 3 Wands, there's no communication, right? Because you're not being communicated. 5 Sorcerers, there's no conflict. 7 Sorcerers, there's no deceit. Here, there's no guidance. 4 Wands over, there's celebration. There is celebration because you want to be celebrated, but the way how this goes, when you have no communication whatsoever, you're in denial, you know, at the same time. And when you do it, it's like this is not going to end well because that's how it goes. You might be focusing on another Leo, Aries, Sagittarius in that way, right? That's how it goes. What's on the right side for them? Ace of Swords here says a misunderstanding. Magician have right, there's skill. Judgment story, you're taking action. Obviously there is, because you have to be skeptical of what you're doing in that way, because you think, okay, everything seems to be fine, or I know what to do. And, you know, this is the way it seems to be. So you need to understand what works, what doesn't work for you, Aries. You pay attention. So what's on the left side for you, Aries? Words over there's completion. Yeah, because everything's completed, right? What's in L for you? Star of yours, there's no inspiration. Okay? What's on the right side? The Strength card, there's bravery. Yes, because when you're being brave, you know what happens because you need it, because that's the way it works. So let's see what's going on. So let's see for you. Let's see what's this World card for you. Rose over there's completion. The Lover's here, there's no decisions. The Temperance here, there's no healing. Devil here, there's no obsessions. Tower here, there's no transformation. Here, there's guidance. Exactly, you need guidance, right? You pay attention to what you're going to be doing in that perspective. You know, that's how it goes. And when it is, it's like almost a change of reaction. You know, that's how it goes. And when change is the way it goes, that's the way it happens in the way of how it seems to be. You know, you're trying to know what it is in that way, Aries, and you know what it is in that way. What's in of this situation for the Star card? The Stars over their inspiration, Wheel of Fortune reverses. You're having bad luck. You know, Aries, that's the way it works. And the Death card is over there's endings because you're focusing on Scorpio, because you want to understand what you want. And when you have, you know, bad luck, you're not participating while having a clear communication. You know, that's the way it works. And that's how it goes. You need to understand what you're going to be doing in that way, because you're trying to be suitable. You're trying to know what it takes in that perspective. You know, that's the way it works. So, you know, that's the way between you versus them in this situation, right? That's the way it works, and you understand that. What's this Strength card about for them? The Moon is over their rotation, the Emperor is over their structure. Obviously there is, because there's a good way about knowing what to do, and when things be going in the right perspective, you know how it takes in that way, because you're trying to know that everything's all plural, of the way how it works, and you understand, alright, this seems to be happening, alright, I know what to do. Yes, but you have to understand about the way how this is, everything is going to be all perfect in that way, right? That's how it goes. So let's see what's going on in this situation for you, Aries, you versus them. So I'm going to go from the middle to the right, middle to left. 2 Wands here, there's no planning. Empress over, there's nourishment. Queen Wands here, there's no charisma. 10 of Sorcerers, there's no conclusions. 9 of Sorcerers, there's no trauma. 3 Pentacles here, there's no excitement. 5 goes over, there's grief, right? Because you're grieving, right? They are grieving because they don't know how you're going to be treated in that perspective. You know, things are not going as planned, but it's like Well, you're not trying to say, woe with me, I can't do it anymore, I quit. But the way of this is you need to focus about what's going on. If you're focusing on other Pisces, Cancer, Scorpio, you want things to be happening all at once, because that's how it goes. You need to have your own clarity to know what it is, right? You need to face your own abilities for the right or wrong perspective. That's all you can do, Aries, and that's how it goes. What's in the middle to the right to the left side for you? Now, because there's no romance. King wants there's no, leadership. 8 wants there's no speed, right? Here fingers, there's no guidance. King of Pentacles there's no prosperity. Just for yours, you're not telling the truth because you're lying about something. King of Swords yours, there's no knowledge. They have praise there's no inner voice. Ace of Cups there's no prosperity. 4 wands there's no celebration. The World is over, there's completion, right? Because everything is completed, right? That's the way it goes, and it's based on that, right? So if you're not telling the truth and you're lying about something, that's how it works, right? Because you need to understand what goes around comes around for you, Aries. You know what it is, right? That's the way it works, and that's the way it happens. What's the meaning of this situation? There was over there's obsessions, yeah, because you're being obsessed. You're trying to figure out what works, what doesn't. Because you're acting like, oh, everything seems to be fine. No, it's not. Because you're basically telling me that you're in denial. Everything's in denial for you, Aries, and you don't know why. But in that perspective, that's the way it works, right? I'm not being mean or rude to all of you. I'm not. But the way all this is just the general reading for you, Aries. You have to pay attention no matter what it is in this way, and you need to understand about how it goes. Is you're trying to improve yourself wisely to get a better view. That's the way it goes. And you have to have your own viewpoint to know what it is in that way, right? That's the way it seems to be. So, overall, you need to understand about there's a time and place for everything, So let's see what the universe is saying here. So I'm going to go from the middle to the right, middle to the left. Page of Pentacles here, there's no prospects. Ace of Pentacles, there's growth. Six of Cups, upright, there's the past. Human Aries, there's no restrictions. 3 of Swords, there's no heartbreak. Ace of Wands, there's new beginnings. Obviously, there are new beginnings, right? For them, they basically having, their own past. They have their own growth. They have new beginnings. That's how it goes. It's based on that. It's based on what's happening in that perspective, because that's the way it works, right? So if they are having drama, if things are not going the way, or they have bravery, that's the way it goes, right? So they might be focusing on another Leo as a fire sign. It doesn't matter. But you know what it is. That's how it goes. So you're trying to understand about abilities to know what's happening in this perspective. Now, let's see about the middle to the left side for you. Page comes here, there's loyalty. Reverse, there's no action. Queen of Pentacles, there's stability. 3 of Pentacles, there's excitement. Yeah, so I'm going to clarify this Judgment card. Now, Swords here, there's no trauma. The Strength is everywhere, there's bravery. 5 Swords here, there's no revenge, so there's no conflict here. And then we have the 4 Wands is over their celebration, yeah, because you want to celebrate. You want things to be happening all at once, because that's how it goes. It's like, okay, this is the way it works. Alright, I'm not going to get into the nitty-gritty part. This is the way it works, right? This is the way it seems to be. As we know this situation, there's decisions, yeah, because you're going to make decisions the long way for you. That's the way it seems to be. And you have to be plural. You have to know what works, what doesn't. That's the way it seems to be. And you need to focus on that, right? So you understand about that, right? So the point being is that for you, Aries, you need to pay attention that you have to focus on yourself. You have to focus about your abilities from the right wrong perspective. That's all you can do. But you need to understand that you need to take a risk to know what it is. Because this is like almost like a balancing point for you, Aries. You need to pay attention no matter what you're doing in that perspective, no matter what you're going to be facing. This is the way how it works. This is the way it seems to be. This is the way of how you need to understand about what the universe is saying, So you have to believe that you have to make your own decisions. You have to know about your wants, your needs, your abilities. You have to focus on your emotions, your feelings, That's the way it works. So you have to pay attention, right? So you understand that, right? So that's what it seems to be, and this is the way it works. So I hope you all like this video. please give a like, please do a comment if you want. But the way of this is the way it works, right? This is the way it seems to be. So thank you so much. Have a wonderful day to all, and I'll see you next time when I do. And this is the way it is in that moment. This is the way it seems to be. So thank you. Thank you. And bye for now, really. Thank you, and bye.